The Lord be with you and with thy spirit. Almighty and most sovereign God, we give thanks for your work in the life and mind of Jeremiah. The brave warrior was not a coward, was not afraid. Inspire and provoke in us the same mindset of courage, fearlessness, and truthfulness, that we may see error, pull it down, uproot it, throw it out. Rather than that, or in addition to that, I should say, O Lord, that we may plant truth, the truth of thy word, that will exalt thy name and magnify thee above all names, so that all of this stuff going on may be put to the side and we may see you and you only. For the love of Jesus Christ, the grace of Jesus Christ, and the presence of Jesus Christ, through whose name we now pray. Amen. Well, it's been a quiet weekend, a great Lord's Day yesterday, 1928 BCP service. Some would call it lull. I don't know. I'm Reformed, so I don't need smells and bells and donut pointy hats and all the fripperies of the fops. We're still seeking clarification. We insist upon the duties of the 9th commandment to preserve and promote truth, and to speak and stand for the truth. Now, I was talking a little while back to somebody, I'll just pray to the Lord about the Lord's will, whether I should stand up and speak. Give me a break. That's just an excuse for cowardice. Our daily duty is to seek, preserve, and promote the truth, not stand down and hide in a corner. In that connection, we've had some unfortunate engagements with Mr. or Reverend, I guess, Matthew Firth, back and forth. He finally unfriended me. He is a big Fenwick supporter. We have the receipts for that. And yet there are leaking sources saying that there's going to be a motion of no confidence in Fenwick. So he was invited to come on here and amplify, rebut, rebuke, correct. We seek correction if we're wrong. We desperately seek correction. We've invited Mr. Fenwick, Hunt, and Stephen here. Speak to the truth. Now, I can understand the latter three wanting to hold off until the sham trial is concluded. I would bet $1,000. I don't know what that is in British pounds, 700, 800 pounds, maybe, that this is not going to be reversed. Absolutely no way. It might even go $2,000 or whatever, 1,700 pounds. And I think I'd win the bet. We'll see. We are now going on tomorrow about 3 weeks for the appeal, which began in or around 13-ish August. So we invite Reverend Matthew Firth again, openly and publicly. He has refused. I view that as cowardice. He called our channel trash, tripe, hate. Come on here and defend yourself. What's the problem there, son? So we're giving him notoriety. And there's a lot of speculation about who were some of the users on our YouTube on Saturday. It's kind of funny. We seek clarification. We want an examination of the process in Murphy's case. Who was it by name who initiated the charges? What's the evidence? What are the grounds? Now, no doubt Mr. Murphy has offended some in the LBGQT community, no doubt. But Fenwick knew that when he brought him on board from the Church of England. So what has changed? I don't think a lot has changed. Reverend Murphy's been Reverend Murphy. Got to be something. We gave 4 public statements that are circulating, and come on, Fenwick, come and rebut what we put forward. We want correction. We want people to stand up and speak out, as the 9th commandment commands. It doesn't ask. It doesn't ask. We're to stand for the truth. Amazing how many are cowards. You know, will there be a transcript of the appeals process? This has provoked worldwide attention. I've gotten almost little old guy like me, Samuel Ivy. I understand your claim that the Zoomer was Firth. However, what evidence do you have that it was actually him? That's from Samuel. From a guy who traced it back to his specific address, IP address and residence. James, Father Murphy, I don't call him that. I call him Reverend, and he's men did the best evening prayer ever seen, so professional and holy. Shame if he leaves. Yeah, I watched that last night. Is this appeal court? Will we get a transcript? You'd think that it needs to be public. Now, I understand that Morecambe met yesterday in the building, and another minister came and presided, and Reverend Murphy gave a talk, not a sermon. So all of that is very quiet. We don't know what they're going to do, and we'll wait until further word comes from them. Perhaps, and this is my theory, they're just waiting until the sham appeals process goes over. Inquiring Christians are thinking and pondering, what are those clarifications? We reviewed briefly the article by Calderon. Is it a safe harbor? Is it a safe harbor? And then we noticed that about $175,000 had been raised on go send me something. It's on Brett's website. We were going to ask Mr. Fenwick if he has in fact been relieved of his trusteeship at Morecambe. And we want to know what this central trust is. You know, we're Americans. We don't understand that stuff. We wanted to ask him if he came, and we still invite him. Does he have a Syrian Orthodox congregation at St. Abdias in his diocese? Do they use the FCE prayer book, or do they use this so-called Orthodox liturgy that he has crafted? We want a copy of that. Let us look at it. Then we're going to ask him about canons versus FCE canons versus a secular contract. Apparently, the Church of England has moved more toward the contract process. It's easier to get rid of someone. We need background. Let's see, Samuel Wray. My doctoral research is in IP address. IP address alone is not enough to identify the user. Many people today use VPNs. I also assume that many of Firth congregants live in the local area. Okay, I don't know, Samuel. You'd know more than me. I'm only telling you what I was told is that it was traced to his address. So I'll leave it at that. That's a side issue, whether he was there or not. I'm told by another source he in fact was there, but that's a side matter. We wanted to ask Mr. Fenwick about his phone call with the published comment by Dr. Chris Hernandez, to wit, that he was going to sell the building. It was the first response. Chris was trying to get a hold of Brett to work out something about choirs, Philippines and Morecambe or Emmanuel, and they were working on that. So Dr. Hernandez went to the website and found that Brett's name had been sovereignly and unilaterally removed, and the church was under the oversight of the diocesan bishop. And so he was trying to get a hold of him on a legitimate, inquiry. And then he got a hold of Mr. Fenwick. Some kid answered it, I guess. And then finally Fenwick came on and they started talking. I'm trying to get a hold of Brett. And he says, Brett's out of the FCE. And this conversation ensued. Apparently, and Dr. Hernandez reports that slurs were made against Mr. Murphy, and that is an affidavit to that effect. And he asked, well, what's going to happen to Emmanuel? And Fenwick said, and this is all before it became public, I might add, we're going to sell the building. Where's the pastoral sensitivity? Anyways, we're going to ask Mr. Fenwick about Grahame Wray. What's the story? Or Bishop Shucksmith. What's the story? Or A.B. Taylor. What's the story? Or Bishop McLean's lamentation at the end of his life that the worst decision of his life was bringing Fenwick on. We have a witness to that. What's the story with Reverend Virgil Tuntas, I think I'm saying that right. What's the story with Bishop Rosello? What's the story with Reverend Jonathan Brigado? Or Reverend James Pace? Or Dr. Peter Sandlin? Or Reverend Arthur McKay? Or Reverend Julian Mann? These are all people who have left in the last 3 to 4 years. John, what's the story that you need to tell or want to tell? They're all wrong, and you're right. How about the loss of a diocese in South America of 25 churches? A real drama erupted in 2021 when a letter from half of the active clergy and a number of church wardens petitioned the General Council for John's resignation. And they cited failure of leadership, deplorable treatment of clergy, and mismanagement. Are they all wrong? Well, we have news articles, not by me. Anglican Inc. has covered it. And has there been any Christian attempt at reconciliation with these men? Now, as for Brett Murphy's case, did Fenwick consult with the wardens and the church parish council, or was this a unilateral action? The 4 charges, as we understand them, is number 1, he referred to some witches group, which is it's an organization in England, and we want clarification on that. Number 2, he didn't get in some financial report. It was late, 5 or 6 days. 5-minute admin correction. 3, he's used derogatory statements, which I guess are interpreted as bringing disrepute on the FCE. And we ask the question, is the Church of England in the background here? No doubt. He's, called bishopettes and priestettes and apostates and some other terms. And yet Fenwick brought him on board. And Brett was quite a supporter of Fenwick. So we don't know. We want clarification. And then fourth, that Liz Fenwick allegedly called Brett a cult leader. I've heard that apparently that's been said about others. Well, those were some of the questions I wanted to put to John. I call him John rather than Bishop. Jesus called himself Jesus, not Bishop Jesus. Paul called himself Paul, although he was an apostle and a bishop and an elder. But what really struck me as most odd here is an Anglican Inc. article. It was a press release on May 5, 2021, involving Emmanuel in Morecambe. And the title of it is Parish Quits FCE Over Fenwick Scandal. Now, I had to check the dates on this, and it is 2021. And it says on the 12th of February, again, 2021, a bishop, clergy, and some laity emailed the General Council of the FCE to raise concerns about the governance of the Free Church of England. Our rector was one of those who signed. Some of the matters arising have subsequently been reported by the Telegraph, and it's got an article, a URL, Telegraph, questions of missing £300,000. The second article, Telegraph, bishop accused of blackmail and racism. This is in this 2021 article. Press release by the Church Council and trustees of Emmanuel Anglican Church. Goes on, these articles make clear that serious matters are being considered by the Charity Commission and police. To this date, no satisfactory explanations have been given by Bishop John Fenwick or Bishop Paul Hunt. Whistleblowers have raised alerts and have been subjected to abuse of process and unjust treatment. In light of this, our church, Emmanuel, met on April 27. The proposal that our rector resign his license in the FCE and our church leave the denomination was unanimously agreed. So in 2021, Emmanuel sought to leave the FCE. You see, we're in, late August 2024, some 3 years later. Emmanuel goes on, we will be seeking suitable ecclesial oversight and support for our church, family, and mission. This, of course, will take time, but we're thankful to those who have already reached out to explore how they can support us in this period of transition. Meanwhile, our day-to-day ministry continues unchanged, and we are thankful to God for his many blessings. Church Council and trustees of Emmanuel Anglican Church, 2nd of May, 2021. Well, I hope I double checked, and it is 2021. So at one point, Emmanuel was ready to pull out, and it sounds like the rector resigned or was booted. We don't know. Well, one has to wonder if you're inside the FCE, and if you don't toe the line with John, you may run afoul of his temper. And we'd like Matthew Firth to come on and defend Mr. Fenwick. Tell us about it. And I would suggest that all the FCE churches examine their trust deeds and make sure you have competent trustees that are in place and the list is up to date. And if you disagree with Fenwick and his company, that you protect yourselves lest you maybe lose your property. And I understand the various deeds are unique and individual to each church. James, that's just shocking. I don't know what he was referring to. I want to double check something here. Yeah, I can. Okay. I'm going to be copying the Emmanuel that left in 2021 was in Tunbridge Wells, Kent, not Morecambe. Oh, thank you for that, AK. Thank you so much. Very, very helpful. This is I got to put that in here. That was by Dr. Give me a second, folks. Peter Scanlon, I believe his name was. Tunbridge. That clarifies it. Thank you, AK. Is that Arthur K? I hope so. I would like to do another interview with you on your specific situation. So I would say FCE Church is looking and update your trusteeship. Others have come and gone from the FCE with their buildings because Hunt of the Southern Diocese is not apparently as ruthless as Fenwick. But we raised the question, where's Mr. Hunt over those with wayward doctrine? I mean, Hunt, ordained Calvin Robinson, who holds to real presence in the corporal, carnal, and Capernaitic sense, which is explicitly against the old canon Declaration of Principles. And he holds other things, such as possibly the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption of Mary into heaven, as pious doctrines, and who laments the Reformation. And I'd like to interview Calvin if he'd answer some of those questions for me. So if any of you know of where I can reach him, I've not gone too far in looking for that, but Calvin was ordained by Paul Hunt. When I raised that with John Fenwick on our Saturday meeting on 17 August, he pawned it off. Well, that's the Southern Diocese. So that's how he handled it as the Primus, is to palm it off on Paul. Throw Paul under the bus. If Emmanuel Morecambe has indeed succeeded in fending off Fenwick, who would have destroyed them, then it's just another added to this extraordinary list that was driven out, closed down, or who walked away. We think, for example, of the church in Workington, or Fleetwood, or Leeds, or Farnham, Teddington, Exmouth, Exeter, Middlesbrough, Tottington. Dr. Sandlin's church came and went. And there could be others that might be added to this list. And Fenwick's legacy is chaos. It's chaos. An effort was made to update his Wikipedia page, and that disappeared in about 5 seconds. Now, also recently, the last few days, Reverend Wray, minister of Christ Church in Leeds and coordinator of the Evangelical Connection of the Free Church of England, posted this on 2 September. And again, he's the coordinator for the FCEC. He noted that we prayed for Emmanuel Church Morecambe in our service this morning, and that there would be a speedy end to this shameful attempt to try and silence yet another FCE member church, and that the church where John Fenwick is supposed to be the rector acting for the time being as bishop in the FCE and its Primus. Post he occupies, which is supposed to be alongside and on par with all other FCE and lay delegates. Now, this will be disputed, but I've seen it also in the records, but not a hierarchical Church of England type bishop. He is accountable to the Convocation, which meets every year, where clergy and lay delegates meet to consider the affairs of the church and vote on par with each other on matters of dispute. This is what our Constitution lays down for all members of the FCE. As a coordinator of the FCE the Connexion Group, who are likewise in dispute and in impaired communion with Mr. Fenwick, as Emmanuel Morecambe, please note the following. So this is a word to the members of Emmanuel. Mr. Fenwick and his supporters last year at a REC Convocation declared that the denomination needed to reinterpret for the 21st century Section 4 of its Declaration of Founding Principles. I listened to that and I didn't hear that, Reverend Wray. If you have a correction or update to the record, I'd like that. And Fenwick allegedly said this was problematic to some. But who are the to some? He did not specify, but clearly it was to himself. So my second point must be, Grahame goes on, who is disrupting or trying to disrupt true FCE worship in the denomination? Emmanuel or Mr. Fenwick? It's a good question. And apparently this kind of came like a lightning bomb to the congregation and by email. And this Declaration of Principles has historically been a controlling document in the FCE. And then he goes through that Declaration of Principles, well known to old FCEers and RECers. The church, FCE, condemns and rejects first that the church exists only in one form or order of ecclesiastical polity. Second, that Christian ministers are priests in another sense than that which all believers are a royal priesthood. Third, that the Lord's table is an altar on which the oblation of the body and blood of Christ is offered anew to the Father. Fourth, that the presence of Christ in the Lord's Supper is a presence in the elements of bread and wine. That's simple Cranmerianism. And the black rubric of the 1662 prayer book. Fifth, that the regeneration is inseparably connected with baptism. The connection churches in the FCE accordingly call on all FCE members and churches to consider carefully and prayerfully that is actually attempting to disrupt FCE style worship, doctrine, and customs. Morecambe has signed on to these principles faithfully for over 100 years. Mr. Fenwick has only been in the church for 20 years. Secondly, to urge faithful FCE churches to continue to worship according to our liturgy and customs, as you have done for all these years, assured with this fact that Fenwick has no authority or power to prevent you, least of all using secular charity trust law that has no authority over beliefs and practices of the church whatsoever. The Connexion Group, FCEEC, have the full backing of Charity Commission and legal advice given that state laws governing how charities should operate do not interfere in what churches believe or do their services, given that they are determined solely internally by the governing documents and foundational principles of those churches. The Connexion churches urge FCE sister churches to refuse to be intimidated by Mr. Fenwick and his spokesman. He is powerless to prevent church meetings as they should be done by men of 100 years of past ministry. Should such men be accused of misconduct or departure from FCE customs and practices, we have our annual convocation to deal with these issues, an annual meeting which Mr. Fenwick and his supporters are obliged to attend, but to whom they are also accountable along with every other delegate, lay and clergy, on par as is stated in our Constitution. The convocational decisions of which are final and binding on all. Sola Gloria Deo, solus Christus, solus Fides, sola Gratia. Copy was sent to Brett Murphy, Bishop Jesus Espinoza, Reverend Jonathan Bragato, Ewan Wilson, Reverend Nathan Castro Mizahura, Bishop Rossello, Reverend Dan Church Times, Evangelical Times, Reverend Donald Philip Veach, Reverend Joseph Baylor, Reverend Ryan Lewis Underwood, the Evangelical Connection of the Free Churches of England, the Trinitarian Bible Society, Reverend Benjamin Vega Ahumada, Christian Boliano, and Neftali Angelos Montano. So it was sent out far and wide, but we've gone over our 30-minute time limit, and we have a statement from Matthew Firth, a Fenwick defender, as was Reverend Murphy, and we'll pick that up in our next edition. Let us close using the 15th, the collect for the 15th Sunday after Trinity, which is coming up next Sunday. Keep us, we beseech thee, O Lord, thy church, with thy perpetual mercy, because the frailty of man without thee cannot but fail. Keep us ever by thy help from all things hurtful, and lead us into all things that are profitable. We seek, O Lord, to speak the truth, to promote the truth, to stand for it, and to speak it clearly, not hiding, but acting like Jeremiah the prophet, who was inspired by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen. Apologize for going over. We're trying strictly to stick to the 30 minutes, and I got a copy of our comments, because the comments do not come on once this is put to YouTube. So Godspeed.